Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hi everybody, Neil Allen here, creator of Zatswan Comics. I am currently inking a page of Zatswan that I have in front of me. We're going to be working on this panel right here. And while I ink this comic, I'm going to be talking about why I do not read manga and do not really care about it all that much. I mean, that's kind of maybe putting things a bit strongly, but we'll just go with that. So, if you're into comics, I'm going to be using this size 3 Kolinsky Sable brush to do that. If you're into comics, you've probably heard this discussion for years going on about how manga is so much better than comics and doing so much better than comics, and there's so many lessons that comics, like Western American comics, need to learn from manga. And yeah, I think there are lessons to be learned. I'm not like, that's not the issue. I just find I'm not interested. As popular as manga, I might come in here and pencil some stuff, or maybe I'll just go straight into the inks. It's not like, that's not the issue. And it's not like I dislike manga, and actually I have quite a history. Here's what I was thinking about penciling in this hair on Alika, getting in this ringlet. I do have a history of reading manga, but I mean, I haven't read it regularly in quite some time. And I have enjoyed manga quite a bit, but more recently, I find I have no real interest in reading it. People have asked me, like, do you read manga? Like, fairly recently, honestly. And it's like, my answer to that is usually going to be, oh, it's not yeah, I'll read it if, I find something I'm interested in. So I guess then the problem that we're getting, like, really close to the answer here, like, why don't I? I never find anything that interests me. Okay, we'll keep it like that and keep going. So the interesting thing about manga is it has this reputation for having, like, everything. There's, like, if you can think of it, there's, like, I think I've even said that, like, just as a shorthand, if you could think of it, there's probably a manga about it. And, that's a well-earned, well-deserved reputation that it has. Yet at the same time, the reason I really don't read manga is because I don't find anything that interests me. So let's cut right to the chase. What am I looking for, actually? What I'm looking for, kind of specific, but not really that specific. It's actually just what I'm doing here. Give me a character, give me a super handsome black man hero with, like, a gorgeous love interest. And I'm talking like this guy's the real hero, right? He's not some kind of ensemble player. He's just the dude, Give me that and make it good. Or actually, how about we'll do this? Give me that and I'll just check it out. I'll check it out and see if it's good or not. But what I just described, it might sound to you like, oh, like this guy's, like, very specific or something like that. And not really. Not at all, actually. Now, the way that manga is, what I just asked for, it's like I'm asking for the moon. But really I'm not. I'm just asking for the basic stuff that so many other people get on the regular, that honestly I do not see over in manga, like, hardly at all. So as it happens, I am not like I'm not like a stranger to manga at all. The stuff that I described. So if somebody came to me and asked me about, like, this is what I'm looking for, and they were me, like, they just asked for exactly everything that I described. There are some stories that I can, this is a flower in her hair. We're just going to get in a very basic shape at first and then get more intricate with it later. There are some very basic stories, or there are some stories that I can point to, but nothing's probably going to really um, scratch that itch for the person. The closest I think you can get is let me see. I pulled it out just for this occasion. The closest I think you can get is what is something else is in here. Oh, an unopened Castlevania Curse of Darkness soundtrack sampler. I wonder how much this is worth. Probably not that much. Great soundtrack, this game, but the game sucks. But that's like another story. The closest you can get is this comic here, which is called Knights. I set my brush down. I don't want to leave it like setting too long. You do have a black protagonist. He is the hero. Coincidentally, I just flipped right to her. He does have a love interest. Uh-oh. There's actually something a little beep, 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 beep. There, I flipped to a page that's a little risque. I did. Anyway, you do, like, so I do know about some stuff. It's not like I'm a complete stranger to this. I would recommend Knights, though it's not perfect, and I can like explain some of the reasons why. Um, there are other manga stories like Blaster Knuckle, which is pretty cool. You're not gonna get that like love interest going on in that though, but it is like a pretty cool story. It's kind of like Berserk, sort of, but like starring a black hero. It takes place in like old America. It's actually pretty cool. Like, I think it's a cool story. This stuff, I actually like it quite a bit. Of course, there's like Afro Samurai. He does have a love interest, well, kind of. Otsuro, I believe. Wow, is my memory that good? Is that her name? Spoiler alert, he like kills her, like nearly the first time she really shows up. So, so you know what? It's like when you really think about it, there's actually, you know what? I think let's continue getting in some of these lines over here. There's not as much of that as you might think from this medium that's supposed to have something for everybody. Now, I want to make something kind of clear though. It's not like I'm blaming manga for this. It's not like I'm mad at manga. It's not like I'm demanding manga or the people who create it do anything specifically to meet my needs. That, like, they obviously aren't too interested in doing that, and I'm sure they have their reasons. They have their own audience that they're thinking about. They're completely different culture and everything. So I think it's fine. Everything, like, I'm not complaining about anything here, but at the same time, I am explaining, like, okay, why don't I read this? And actually, coincidentally, why am I more likely to read your sort of generic Western superhero comic? This is actually a big reason. Because as bad as superhero comics can be in some regards, in many regards, and even in this particular area, they are interestingly more likely to give me what I'm looking for. Manga, like I said, what I just described, I may as well be asking for the moon. It's exceedingly rare. I'm not saying it doesn't exist completely, but it's like, you know, something that you're going to have a hard time finding over there. I know. Like I said, it's not like I'm a stranger to manga. And speaking of that, I want to say a couple other things too. It's not like I don't like manga. Some people might be thinking like, Neil, that sounds kind of shallow. Why can't you just relate with characters of whatever? You know, okay, that's an interesting um that's an of whatever background or whatever appearance. The reverse is also true. People can do that, but they don't want to do it all the time, and that's like why one of the big reasons why the characters in manga look the way they do. They're designed the way they are to cater to the audience that the people making the stuff is going after. You know what I mean? And honestly, I think a lot of times, like, Yeah, it doesn't really work that way. So you will say something. You might think that like, well, look at all these white people who read manga. Like it's really big over here in the West. Um, I think they read manga because the characters much of the time look white to them, so they are easy for these people to identify with. Um, like, let me grab that book again, actually, that I have here. Okay, this looks like people are gonna think this is a character Euphemia, a red-headed, light-skinned girl. These are not typically, this can and it done in a very exaggerated cartoon style. It's gonna look like a white character to many people. Let's look at this other volume. Okay, we have this is actually the love interest. I mean, come on, these aren't like uh, Asiatic uh, features here, but I don't think they're supposed to be even because this actually takes place in like a place that's the Kingdom of Exclude, which is like based off of old medieval German, like I guess German speaking territories, uh, Holy Roman Empire stuff, I suppose. So um, let's examine that a bit. So these people, these Westerners will read that. So why don't they watch? Why is that so popular for them? And say not Bollywood, this East Indian sort of you know entertainment industry. Well, I think one of the big reasons is exactly what I said. They can relate easier. They can identify with those characters because they look white to them. And frequently, uh, they're even in settings that they can identify with. Like that's a fantasy. That's a like fantasy story nights, and it takes place in some medieval fantasy setting. Bollywood is going to be harder for them to identify with because they know that these are Indian people. It's like something that seems like it's for Indians. You know what I mean? And they just aren't going to identify with that as much. So it's not as popular over here. Um, okay, now let's go down and get in this hand here. I'm kind of debating, should we go up here or down here? So basically the way it goes is like this. I can and have like read manga with different looking characters, right? I've done that plenty of times, many years. And eventually, okay, so I've had the open mind, but eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm in the mood for this sort of thing. This is what I'm looking for. I know my guy's not colored in right now, but he would have kind of a brown complexion and stuff. This is what I'm looking for. It's like, I'm never getting. And I think people who say that, like, why can't you just identify with whatever character? Um, I think many times, not all the times, the people who will tell you that are not really qualified to pass a judgment like you should do that. Like that's just what you should do. Like somehow you're being shallow or not open minded and kind of presenting things like somehow the problem is with you. Um, these people are getting stuff that they identify with all the time. I think that's the issue. Like yeah, I can do that, but sometimes you just don't feel like doing that all the time. Eventually you're kind of like, you know what? Um I want a different looking hero. I've seen this type of generic Gundam wing looking dude like I don't know how many times. Gundam wing looking dude, Death Note looking dude. I mean, you can just keep going on and on. Ryu looking dude, Richter Belmont looking dude. Speaking of Castlevania, I mean, eventually you're kind of like, okay, I've done that. Why is it all? You don't ask the question, why is it always this? I think you kind of ask the question, I want something else for a change. And you'll probably notice very early on that, like, none of this stuff really resembles like positions a person that you may identify with, even in superficial ways, even though it's not superficial really, like physical appearance stuff. None of it positions, even if like characters like that show up, they're never positioned in that role of being the hero. It's similar to a lot of stuff that you see over here. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not looking for an ensemble dude. I'm not looking for an asexual. I'm not looking for somebody who barely gets any focus. I'm looking for a guy that's the hero. And what I'm asking for really isn't anything that's like super duper like weird or uncommon. These other people are getting that all the time. That's why they like it. They identify with it. They can escape into the characters easily. And you know, I don't want to come across like I'm begrudging in anything really. I'm trying to. Okay, we went a very fine line here, and it was thicker than I wanted. We're doing some fine work here. It takes some good. These brushes can give you very, very thick lines or very, very thin lines. There are other tools I can do or I can use to get in these lines, but I don't feel like doing them. I want to use a brush, and using brushes is really fun. We can clean that up though, not the end of the world. So anyway, yeah, I don't read manga because it doesn't give me what I'm looking for. This stuff that's supposed to have everything, it doesn't really, honestly. It doesn't have everything for everybody. Um, the stuff that I explained to you is so exceedingly rare. I can only really give you one example, and this is a person. I'm not an ignorant person at all when it comes to this. So there are a couple other things I want to talk about with that, right? This is the way that things are these days, okay? Like a long time ago, like previous decades, people talk about this a lot, but I want to explain to you what it really means. People talk about how like, oh, these days there are so many different options. People could just surf the internet, they can watch YouTube, they can play a video game, they can do other stuff, just go outside or hang out. There's like a lot of stuff that they can do. I think I'm gonna let's stick with let's stick with this brush for a bit. I was thinking about cleaning up this hand some. I think maybe we'll clean up the hand just because I don't want to leave it like that. It might be interesting, kind of, to show you too, like how I do this stuff. I'm gonna take a little dip pen actually. So here's what like is going on here. Reading is a form of entertainment that takes quite a bit of commitment, right? Because let's say you can it takes like concentration. I can't sit down and eat while I read because I mean you can to a degree, but you're not gonna typically I think sit there and eat a whole meal. You know, I can do that and listen to an audiobook because you know you don't want to get if you even if you're doing something like eating a sandwich, you don't want to get like food on your book, you know what I mean? But I can watch YouTube while doing that. I can this is a very fine point dip pen that I really enjoy. I can listen to an audiobook. I can, you know, watch something with like a significant other, you know, so or people can do that, you know, and that's so you're killing a couple birds with one stone. That could be like quality time plus entertainment plus you're eating. So you're sustaining yourself. Reading, um that's kind of more of a solitary experience a lot of the time. I mean, there can be like instances where it's like more of a shared experience. Like you can listen to an audiobooks or something with other people, things like that's not reading though. That's listening. Okay, let's make these lines a little clear. So reading is a thing. I'm saying all that to say that it takes commitment, you know, which means that, so this is, as a creator myself, This is one of the reasons why one of the modern strategies for writers is to do what we call niching down, which means to pinpoint. It's not, there's nothing wrong with having your work kind of general. There isn't, but also a strategy is to pinpoint a certain type of person and give them exactly what they're looking for. Because oftentimes deep in that deep down niche, kind of more of these specific areas, people actually aren't getting what they're looking for as much, right? So just like what I talked about, what am I looking for? Super handsome, idealized black man hero who's not just some ensemble dude. He's the hero, and he has like a gorgeous love interest, and they do cool hero adventure action stuff. You know what I mean? Okay, so that's actually what I'm creating here, but I'm also creating it because it was a thing I was looking for. I'm like, eh, there's not a lot of that around, and the thing is, it's sounds kind of specific, but it's not, because there's plenty of stuff like that out there. It just doesn't star the super handsome black dude with the gorgeous love interest. You know what I mean? So it's sadly more rare than it probably should be. And I do know there is a want for that, because the thing is, what I just explained, yeah, there's a lot of that out. It just never it very seldom stars this type of character. You know what I mean? So there is a want from those people to be in, to see a hero in roles like that. It's just that, just like I talked about with manga, let's clean this nib off and set this aside, bring the brush back. There's just not a lot of that out there. And even when you do, you get compromises like, the asexual, the has to be like tagged along by a white guy. Kind of similar, interestingly, to what we're seeing with lanterns, somewhat. Uh, Not completely, but kind of. You know what I mean? It's like, nah. I'm looking for a guy who's just the guy. And I get why like people might be hesitant, or like companies might be hesitant, or creators might be hesitant to do that. Mainly it comes down to, well, is there enough of an audience? Are enough people going to pay for that? And so I understand those concerns, but still, there is an underserved audience of people looking specifically for that. Let's go down and work on this other hand here with the brush. If we need to clean it up, some of our work up with the dip pen, we will. So, and it's not just that particular thing. Deep in those deep down, niches, people actually aren't getting what they want. So, and they're looking for it. So if you give them exactly what they want, because they're not used to getting, it's like, oh man, I've been waiting. Like, they get energized by that, right? They will pause. They will they will close that YouTube tab. They will turn that video game off. They will turn that movie off. Like, I'll get back to this. I got my thing right here. Like, this is what I'm all about. I've been looking for this, and I hardly ever get it. And here it is. They will read. That's why niching down is a good strategy these days, because there's so much stuff for people to do. But there's still something there. They have some desire. They're still not getting, or getting it rarely, right? So if you pinpoint that person and give them the book with that thing, okay, now they'll read. Otherwise, it's like reading, if you don't really know why it can be challenging to get people to read sometimes, because if they don't really know they're going to be getting something like they want, it's a big commitment for them to make, for those reasons I just said. They can do something else that doesn't occupy their attention as much, that might even be as fun, if not more. You know what I mean? So to get them to read, it's a bigger ask than to get them to doom scroll or watch a video or whatever. You know what I mean? Because reading just occupies a person's attention like fully, actually, when they're doing it. Or just about. Or it can. You know what I mean? So I'm, saying all of that because there is this is these are some of the reasons why I don't read manga, because it's not giving me exactly what I want, and there are so many other things I could do. I could be doing this, for example. Now, if it kind of goes back to what I was saying, if manga gave me what I was looking for. So here's how this goes. I'm not willing to read manga too much because it's not giving me what I'm looking for. Now, is there some good stuff out there that I'm missing? Probably, but I'm just don't have the interest in even looking into that, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Maybe at some point I'll want to go read, I don't know, what are people talking about, Demon Slayer? But as it is now, I don't care about that. Like, maybe I don't know much about it. I'm not, the thing is that interest to know more isn't even there. The interest, this stroke's going to be a little hard for me. Just because of the way the page is positioned for certain reasons. Let me explain that, why you might get some interesting art insights. So why this stroke would be hard for me is because from my vantage point, from where I'm looking, I cannot see where I'm going. I know the general line that I want to make is like that, but I can't see what's up ahead of me. The brush tip is in the way. Yet coming down and going like this isn't as natural for me to do. It's not as good of an angle for me to get a stroke on, so there's a chance my line's going to be wobbly and not confident. So that's the issue I'm having. I can see where I'm going here, but this motor motion here is not as natural for me. So I'm going to actually have to turn the page a bit to actually get a better angle. So you have to do that sometimes when inking. Okay, now let's come back down here. Okay, so like I've been talking about, reading, kind of a big ask. I can read. I do like to read. But for me to commit to reading some whole thing that I don't even know, I've never read it before, and I don't know if I'll like it, there's a much higher likelihood of me to do that if somehow I know there's at least some hook that's strongly captivating me and giving me something I'm looking for or been looking for. But then there's another part of this I haven't talked about yet. So that's one thing, there's that hook, but then I'm going to actually have to like it. Just because it might give me some aspects that I've been looking for doesn't necessarily mean I'll think it's good. That's going to depend on execution. So anyway, this is why I don't read manga now. I am more likely to read superhero comics for a couple reasons. I already have again, reading's kind of a big ask. And for the reasons I said, so at least versus some other things, I already have familiarity with quite a few of these characters I know about. So I already kind of have an attachment to them or like them. Say Superman. Oh, okay, I like Superman. That's one of the big draws of Western comics. A brand new that's why newer IPs kind of obviously have a harder time. People they don't know if they'll like that or not. And a lot of times, because what I've explained about reading can be getting someone to just sit down and spend their time doing that when there are so many other things they could be doing. I mean, even just if they're just waiting at, I don't know, an airport gate, or just, I don't know, killing time, they still don't need to be reading your book. They can still now sit there with their phone watching videos or something, you know what I mean? So when people don't know you from nothing, it's kind of a big ask to get them to, take a chance with their time on, a brand new IP or something, or some unfamiliar IP. I get that. And going back into more again, staying on track with why I don't read manga, because there's nothing there that's like enticing me to want to sit down there to risk my time to read something I like. Okay, generic Gundam Wing looking dude. I've seen that. Like, I'm not complaining about it. It's like, yeah, I've been here, done that. Um, okay, like Death Note looking guy, light. Okay, I'm not gonna go out of my way to like read that just because it has this looking guy on it. You know what I mean? Some people will, and that's fine. Um, but no, like you're gonna have to like give me some kind of extra push for why I should read this stuff. Now it might be good, but it could be good and I could still not care. You know what I mean? And the thing is, like, yes, I have read manga where I've just sat down and read it because it was interesting. Like, I do love things like Sailor Moon. So I'm not saying that it always has to line up with my particular, preferences. But after reading so much of it, after so many years of this, and honestly, for as much as people talk about manga is all fresh and, you know, got this going for it and that going for it, man, so much of that stuff is so much the same old thing and so trope heavy. It's like, it's like this again. And if you're not giving me that extra push, it's like, okay, I'm just not looking for any more of that. I'm not in the mood for that at this time, apparently. And I haven't been in the mood for it for like a long time. Now, again, you show me something that actually captivates me. It's like, bleh, like the Metal Gear thing. It's like, put something in front of me that makes me go, bleh. I will stop and I will look into that. However, manga does that so infrequently that now it's just like, got the Gundam Wing looking dude. Or some other generic looking dude. And, those synapses might be going off for some people, but that's what makes people different from other people. They're not going off for me. To me, it's just like, oh, that again. And eventually you start falling into that feeling. I don't even really think, I don't even think about it, but it's like, this stuff is not for me. Just like some people might think Bollywood is not for them. Because, you put out a Bollywood movie in front of the right person, and all of a sudden it's like they're getting stimulated and excited. You put out a Bollywood movie in front of your regular Western person, that's just not happening. Not usually. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like that Western person looking at a Bollywood thing. It's like, that's nice. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what manga's like for me, so. I don't really think about it in these terms much, but I guess my feeling is like, that's not for me. That's like for somebody else. I have looked at that quite a bit. I kind of know what it's about and what it's like, more or less. And it's, I don't think it's okay. It's not bad. Some are really good. But it's like, take you, for example. You could probably watch a Bollywood movie and it might not even be bad, but it's also not something that you're like oftentimes probably going to be like deeply into unless that is like a certain interest of yours. So I guess those are the reasons why I don't read manga. I don't feel that stuff's like targeted toward me, and I have read manga. I do know manga. There is manga that I like. I don't put a manga in front of me that actually looks like something I'd want to read, and I will look into it. I'm no stranger to manga. I have certain things that I'm interested in getting, just like anybody else would. And the thing about it too is these interests I have, they're not uncommon. Like people, I'm sure there are a lot of people who feel the same way. I guess for some of these people out here, they just deal with it though. I'm kind of at the point where it's like, I think probably a lot has changed with me since I developed the ability to make my own comics and entertainment and stuff. Not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I don't want to act like I'm complaining about anything. I really don't. I'm just like explaining my own personal reasons, like why I don't read this stuff. But I'm not willing to put up with that. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it's not doing anything particularly wrong. Just like some people might think Bollywood's not doing anything particularly wrong, but um, it's kind of like that's why I think one of the reasons a lot of people don't watch Bollywood. They're like, this isn't my type, this isn't my type of thing. Um, and I guess that's kind of how I feel in regards to manga. Let's give you a bit of your ear coming through here. Yeah, that looks good enough. Okay, like, yeah, they just don't really put out anything I'm too interested in. My tastes, um, I guess you can say they're kind of specific, but they're not. I think, like, we all kind of have tastes that are probably kind of specific, but some people more than others. But the thing is, the people who have the tastes to see what they want to see, they just get those needs met from the stuff. Me, I don't. So if the stuff's not meeting my need or something I'm looking for, like it's just not there, then it's like, okay, I don't really read it. Then and that's kind of the situation, I would say. Like, would this much of this bun be coming through? I don't think so. We could take care of that later. Like, if I do want to cut some of that off, I can. But we'll look at it later on. Now we have a big... And it might be okay. I'd have to, like, check that out in particular. Okay. It's probably fine, actually. So those are kind of my reasons. And again, nothing wrong with it. It's just, like, that stuff's, like... I guess it's kind of like... sort of when you hear people say stuff like, it sounds like sort of an ignorant thing, but like when, you hear people say like, well, why aren't black people into comics? Oh, they'll think that's like, oh, that's for white people or something like that. And, usually that is kind of like an ignorant take a lot of times. But actually, kind of when I think about it sometimes, like, why don't you read manga more, Neil? That's like for white and Asian people. That's actually sort of what I'm thinking. And it's like not coming out of... And I do like manga, honestly. It's just... it's meant to meet those people's needs, which is fine. Not necessarily mine. Not commonly, at least. And I'm kind of looking for something more that's going to specifically meet my needs. Not that this, like, you have to be a specific type of person for this to meet your needs. Not necessarily. Just like I can read Sailor Moon and have a good time or something. I think what happens is you eventually get fatigued when this stuff is never, ever, 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 ever meeting your needs. Or it's so rare. It's so rare that it almost may as well be never. You know what I mean? I think that's the issue. This stuff is designed to meet the needs of another audience that is not me. And I can read it and enjoy it, even without my particular needs being met. Or it just meets other needs for you, like... you can still identify with the characters and stuff. Like, there are still Sailor Moon characters I like a lot, like Nephrite. He's one of my favorite. He's actually one of my favorite characters. I identify with him a lot, just in like, well, actually, do I? I just think he's really cool. But I think there does become a fatigue when it's like, okay, you do, a sense does start to settle in where it's like, okay, this is when it's the same, when your needs are never ever being met by the stuff, or certain needs aren't being met by it. Eventually, you had enough. And it's not like, again, like, how do I come across? It's not like I'm blaming that for it. It's not like stop the presses and, you know, do everything to meet my particular demand, or I have demands. It's not that. Um, but okay, I wanted to get that line in good, so I wanted to concentrate. Our Alakazam is almost in well here. We will now come down and get this, and there's this armband here, and then we'll probably put the brush up and come in with perhaps dip pen to get some of these other details in. But yeah, so manga, nah, yeah, it's going through this like big, or it has been going through this big renaissance. A lot of people like it. It's very popular. That's cool. I don't pay attention to it like at all, almost, actually at all. Um, so I mean, not out of any kind of spite. It just doesn't interest me. You know, like I've seen that. There's nothing over there I'm seeing that's like um, really, really, really appealing to me in particular. Like just off the jump, like, oh, I saw this and like I really wanted to read that. No, it just looks kind of like the same old type of stuff. You know, it's like I've seen that stuff. So I'm just not particularly captivated to like, you know, just not particularly captivated by anything I've seen over there. But I don't think, like I said, they didn't make that with me in mind. Uh, okay, so this is pretty much done. As far as, you know, the whole thing, I guess we can use this to segue into like some other points. I'll be responsible and get a pencil out. Like about how manga's kicking comics' butt and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, I get. Well, I mean, you gotta be kind of more specific what you're talking about. You're talking about like DC and Marvel. Okay, but a lot of stuff is kicking DC and Marvel's butt. You know, like young adult comics and stuff is kicking DC and Marvel's butt. Um, Western comics, I think, are doing fine. I don't think mangas. I know manga's like very popular over here, but um, I think when people act like manga's handily defeating comics, they're almost always just talking about DC and Marvel. Which, I mean, they're just different things as I see it. Not that there aren't things that DC and Marvel could learn from manga a lot, but they're also different things. Like a person who's gonna, there are different things that appeal to different people. Like, people could say, like, oh, well, my hero, I'm gonna need to get a drink of water. Hold on. Okay. Too much rambling, I guess. Now, people could say something like, oh, well, My Hero Academia is like a superhero comic, so you're playing in the same sandbox with DC and Marvel. It's like the same thing. No, I wouldn't say that. I don't think those things are going to appeal to the same people. I mean, for one thing, just on grounds by how the thing looks, that, you know, that's like people looking to read Superman, I don't think are going to be looking to read that. Seems like a completely different thing. It can be kind of a take on superheroes, but I don't necessarily think you're going to even appeal to the same audiences with that. Uh, I think what DC and Marvel have done, like kind of historically, is they just left a lot of stuff on the table that created a lot of opportunities for others. But we'd have to go like way back. like all the way, like decades and decades back. Like they lost, for example, the romance market. You know, they used to do those like romance comics, but a romance comic of the 1960s or something, it looks a lot different than a romance comic today, to the point where uh they probably don't even seem like the same type of thing. You know, like I don't think DC Comics were ever gonna create a comic not on their own. Like they might after seeing other people do it. Like some of the stuff you see on Webtoon, for example, I just don't think so. And you know, there was I've talked about it before, like these fans of like romance comics, they're gonna get their romance comics, you know, they're gonna get their comics. If DC's not gonna do it, just like people are gonna get their comics. Like I'm talking about like what I wasn't getting from manga. Well, one way or another, people gonna get their comics, you know what I mean? Even if they have to create their comics, they're gonna get their comics. So I think that yeah, DC kind of, or I'm talking about DC. That's another thing too. I'm not like these days like a big Marvel comics reader. So yeah, but I guess I should be talking about both of them. Um, okay, like yeah, they just kind of left a lot of opportunities open for other people. That these companies were just never going to do that. I guess they got to the point where they didn't know how to do anything other than what they did, but there was still a demand for people to read comics of a certain type, you know. Uh like something like shoujo mangas, like these companies don't know it. I don't think they know enough about that. You know, they have had stuff like Amethyst Princess of Gem World, but it's still, you know, if you look at the old comics, it still comes across as something. There are certain magical girl elements for sure, but it still comes across as something like uniquely it. You know what I mean? It's not like something you know, like say the Japanese would have made, I think. And okay, I guess they like what I'm getting is these companies, I don't think they knew how to talk to these other audiences well. I'm wondering if I made these like thick enough. I think they're okay. We'll leave it like that for now. Okay, so now we're going to want to come in and work on her face. Uh But that's basically how it goes. You know what I mean? Let's put the brush down. I don't think we need it. You don't see it on camera, but I'm washing it off. People are there are going to be like openings that people see, right? Just like I saw an opening. Like there's a certain type of hero that I don't feel we're getting enough of, you know, from anywhere really. I'm not saying it doesn't exist everywhere or anywhere, but it's like even when you get it, there always seem to be caveats, you know. And I just wanted to create a hero where, you know, you don't have to deal with those caveats as much. Uh, okay, now let's put the brush down, and I'm looking for there's a certain cap I have for my brush, and it's like, where did I put it? It protects the point of the brush. Okay, I really couldn't find the thing. I looked. It's like one of these clear caps for brushes here. You know, like it's for this one. This one's missing it. They're easy to lose because they're clear. I don't know where it is. I really looked. It'll turn up when it feels like it. But as I was like going through it, I know I sound dismissive and stuff. Like I know I kind of don't, but like, oh, it's for Asian people and stuff like that. I could give you a bit of my personal background. I mean, kind of it's personal. This is my old katakana book actually. I have studied Japanese, so I mean, it's interesting I say this stuff like I don't read manga. This is for Asian people and not for me. And um, I have studied Japanese. My hiragana book is like somewhere around here. I have to find out. I remember doing all this is from. I did have a Japanese girlfriend. Her name is Nami. Yeah, like the One Piece character. But as it so happens, if you don't know, Nami is just a Japanese woman name. I think it has something to do with apples, actually. Um, that would be like it's interesting the things it's interesting the things that I wrote here. So I don't know. Like I do like let's get back to inking. As far as the Japanese girlfriend Nami, yes, I have lived the dream. She was a very beautiful woman, but that's a whole story in itself. Nami, it wasn't really a dream, you know. I know a lot of people put Japanese women over, like a lot. And okay, let's get dip pins out. Blink. Red feather dip pin, and I think we'll stick with that and work on red feather dip pin and little tiny dip pin. That is a whole other story, and I don't know how personal I want to get with it, but you know, Nami actually treated me fairly not so good a lot of the time. And you know, having a relationship with her was very challenging, and I'm not talking about like, oh, the cultural, no, like I had nothing. I'm not talking about anything, not so much. I mean, there is definitely like there is definitely some interesting cultural stuff when you when you're dating a Japanese woman, no doubt. That's a whole other topic. There's like a whole gigantic history that I could tell you about that. Let's get my magnifying glass. Okay. There's a whole gigantic history like I could tell you about, you know, that has to do with you know, Nami and Japan and learning Japanese. I'm not like fluent in it. Okay, I want to see something here. Hold on a minute. Let me look at my sketch. Okay, so what I was saying is, okay, her head's at a bit of an angle here, like it's a little slanted. I don't think we want that much, but we're gonna want like this raised up a little bit, and I think this shouldn't be that much at an angle. Probably should come down like about like that. That looks a little better, but yeah, I guess like I'm not dismissive towards this stuff. Manga's cool, Japan is cool. You know, they make a lot of great stuff. I'm just, I guess, haven't been in the you know, I do have some interesting history as I brought up with Nami. Okay, let's work on this a little bit. So it's nothing I'm like, I just haven't been in the mood for that, I guess for the reasons that I brought up earlier. I'm not dismissive of it, you know. It's just that, I guess I'm looking for my like idealized black guy right now. Well, it's not like something that's not just like right now. It's like, I think it's kind of what I said. Eventually a feeling of fatigue sets in, and it's like it's not that different, so it's kind of samey. And it's like, oh, okay, more of this, and it's like the same. I'm still not like getting what I want to see in some respects. So I just don't feel like, you know, indulging in that too much. That's the reason why I have like quite a history of reading manga. I just, like I said, eventually a feeling of fatigue sets in eventually when you're not getting um, needs met from it, you know? I guess that's kind of the situation I'm kind of in with it. But what was I talking about before I went looking for that cap for my brush? My Hero Academia and Superman. Yeah, those are like, I don't think that's, there will be crossover, of course, because it's like geeky stuff and still like comics. But I'm skeptical that those would typically like appeal to the same type of people. You know, just like for one thing, just look at the way, I think I was talking about like, look at the way the thing looks for one thing, you know what I mean? You know, some people, not everybody's going to gravitate to that style, and looks, you know, for a visual medium like comics are important. And then it's not just looks, it's also just, you know, just various stylistic tropey things, you know. Uh, so, you know, I guess there are things that like, here's one way of looking at it. Yeah, there are things that Western comics can learn from manga, but I also think that, you know, Western comics kind of, they have their own problems and lessons they need to learn irregardless of manga, I suppose, because they're kind of, there are similarities, yeah, they're comics, but they're also different things that a lot of times are going to appeal to different people. Now, but that is one thing to talk about, like consider like how the comics just kind of trapped themselves into one particular genre, like largely superheroes, even though that's not entirely true. Um, let's add some detail on the hair here. There is truth to it, but it's not entirely true. Like, there's more than just superheroes going on, even at Marvel and DC. But there are even things like, you know, plenty of other books where it's not just that. But yeah, a lot of it is that though, and that's what a lot of the fan base looks for. How do I feel about that? I don't, I see that as an issue, but I think it's an issue in general, but it's not something I particularly mind because I really love superheroes, and as you can see, if you haven't been able to tell, like I work on superheroes because I like superheroes. Um, I guess I work on superheroes like, you know, I'm working on this here because, you know, I love superheroes and I want to create that type of superhero that I'm, you know, looking for. Apparently, I haven't felt that. Uh, so the stuff I've seen scratches that itch enough. It doesn't scratch it completely for me. You know what I mean? So I'm working on things on my own. Like, yeah, there are like these black guy superheroes, but I always see them as like having some kind of issue often, or sometimes they just don't appeal to me. Like for example, a character like Black Lightning just doesn't appeal to me just because, hey, not everything's going to, you know. Uh, and I don't think I need to like put forward an essay on why this character doesn't appeal to me. Some just not everything's gonna appeal to you, you know. Uh, and I know I've talked about this before. I know the stuff that I do is not going to appeal to everybody. Okay, clean the nib up a bit. And continue to add in some detail here. About that Japanese woman, this is an aside. That, I don't know. I probably won't really talk about that because it's like, you know, that's, yeah, there is kind of like, I don't know. My channel's not really like a diary or anything like that. It's just talking about comics, and that's kind of a personal thing. But man, that story is so wild if I were to tell you about it. Uh, Here's one thing that I can say, and maybe this will be useful for somebody. Maybe. I don't know. I think here's a takeaway for me. We're going off kind of to a different topic though. I think that especially in geek spaces, like for instance manga fans and stuff like that, Japanese women are highly idealized. Like we'll just kind of tell it like it is. Like there's um, definitely a perception that they're really incredible and things like that. And I think there's a perception that like Japan is really incredible. And yeah, it is in a lot of ways, but like other places, it actually has a lot of problems too. Okay, there's like something we want to get here. It's just that sometimes its problems manifest in different ways. Japan is like a place where on the surface it's like um on the surface it's like really pretty and everything's beautiful and clean and amazing, and I'm not taking that like away from Japan. I guess there is a point to me saying there is a point to this. But there is sometimes an underbelly of dysfunction. And I think that's just a thing to, I guess the lesson is don't get so caught up in thinking that, it's easy to get caught up perhaps in thinking that this thing is so great. Like, for example, Japanese women. And I can't honestly nor would I make a grand judgment of all Japanese women, based upon just my own limited experiences. Like, we all have limited experiences. We haven't dealt with all of them. But what I would say is that, uh, don't get too caught up in like that fantasy that Japanese women are so incredible and so great all the time. I'll just say this. Maybe, but not all the time. No one thing is that all the time. I can just tell you my specific. It is kind of getting off to aside my own specific instances. Because it wasn't just Nami, the one. There was actually a Japanese girl before that named Makiko. And they were the fascinating thing is they were both like the same types of issues arose in both of them in many ways. And I will just kind of generally say they made it. They weren't the best at relationships. I'll just say that it was kind of like they didn't know how to have them effectively. Like they were clueless at it. Like they just weren't good at it. You know what I mean? But I guess I probably won't stick on that topic too much because like it's difficult to really like tell you everything while also kind of tippy toeing, so as not to get too much into like deeply personal stuff or air too much like laundry. You know what I mean? So I'll just say I guess the takeaway is that from somebody, now my experience isn't everybody's, and you shouldn't just blanket judge all people, of a certain type, but don't get too from somebody who's from somebody who's dealt with Japanese women in this like arena, in this setting, kind of intimate relationship. just don't get too caught up in that fantasy, thinking, oh, it's all like the promised land. You know what I mean? Because I know, like, in geeky spaces, especially when we're talking about anime and manga and stuff like that, you're often going to find people who, who they can fall into that sort of trap, just like thinking that they're the promised land. And I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but like if they're having fun fantasizing or whatever, or thinking that like that. But I would just say that kind of similar to what I said about everything appearing like really clean and so ideal on the surface, that's kind of what like Nami was like. You know, on the surface, like, seems like the promised land and everything's so incredible, but there is an underbelly of deep, deep, deep dysfunction. And like dysfunction like you wouldn't believe. If I told you some of the stories, you just wouldn't. I could, you wouldn't. It would be a whole thing, you know, like and very entertaining, I'm sure. But I don't think I want to get too off track with what this channel and stuff is about. Like, it's not about all my personal escapades. Okay, and swing this around like that. All right, we've made some pretty good progress on Aleka. Let's get in that pendant. And then she's wearing a flower in her hair. Okay, so honestly, what happened? I took a break because I had to clear up some space on my phone. Put some of these videos on my external hard drive. And then I was like, well, I'm kind of hungry, so I'm gonna go eat. And now I did that, and I'm back. So I don't remember exactly where I left off, like exactly what I was talking about. But I mean, to sum everything up, yeah, that's kind of what I feel like. This is a scrap piece of paper, just kind of readjusting my space here again. That's what I'm looking for at the moment. I don't feel like, diving into a bunch of stuff and feeling frustrated and excluded. I'm not saying that the stuff is bad. When I'm in the mood, I will like check out manga, or when I feel like there's a good reason for me to, and I guess I just haven't felt that, so this big manga revolution going on, or that has been going on, I haven't been paying like any attention to that. It's just something that I'm kind of like aware is like happening, but it's not like I'm reading any of it or anything. And I just don't have any real interest to. I'm sure there's like good stuff out there. But right now I just don't feel necessarily look at this flower a bit some. Let me look at my reference and see what that looks like. But what I think some people will probably do, because this seems like a thing people will do, is like try to point out all these different examples. Like, there's this black character and that black character. Like, there's Bob from Tenjo Tenge. And there's Bob and Chiaki. And okay, yeah, I get that. Like, I know about Bob and Chiaki. They're cool. But it's like what I'm talking about. I'm looking for that character to where, like, that's the guy. Like, he's the character. Bob isn't bad, but I mean, Bob is like a sidekick who's always getting beaten up. And I don't need a hero to, like, win all the time. I actually, that would be kind of dull and boring. But I mean, a guy who's, like, always getting knocked down so the main guy can look cool or something. It's mainly about, he's not the main character. He's like the main character's best friend. I don't even remember what the main character's name is. Weirdly enough, now that I'm thinking of it, I haven't seen that in a long time or read any of it in a long time. I only remember Bob and Chiaki's name. I don't remember anybody else's name. I'm actually kind of surprised I remember Chiaki's name. But yeah, like, I know about the characters, so it's not like I've said before, it's not like I'm ignorant to manga. The newer stuff, like I don't know. I know the names like of the stuff that people like a lot these days. Like I've never read Chainsaw Man. I couldn't tell you anything about it. For example, um, yeah, I'm sure it's like I'm sure there's good stuff out there. It's just I have. It's not like an indictment on their quality. Just I don't have any real interest in reading that right now. Maybe I'll hop in if I see something that interests me, but it's gonna have to really interest me, you know. Uh, and I'm pretty content. Like I know I've said over and over again that I'm not. I don't want this to come across as accusations and complaining and demands. No, I don't. Like they manga does what manga does. It has the fan base it has. I'm sure they like it the way that it is, and I'm sure they're more or less happy. So I know why they do what they do. But however, I'm also aware of like, okay, well, that's all well and good, but I also have needs of my own. And this, I don't really feel is like meeting those needs at the moment. And historically, it rarely ever has to the point. Certain needs, not all needs, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's been entertaining. But I think when you're like starved of, any kind of representation and things, at least representation on certain factors, eventually, eventually, how can I put this? You're aware of this stuff like the whole time. You don't necessarily like it. You just know that stuff's like consistently gonna do that. And then so you're just not as involved with it eventually, I would say. Not that I dislike it or anything. It's just that yeah, it looks okay. And it's just that I don't know, I just don't feel like I don't feel like reading any of it at the moment. Like there's just no interest there to do that. Okay, let's clean this up a bit, clean up my nib, and we're gonna bring in some rapidograph technical drawing pens to get some of these details in. I may as well keep you with me while I finish up this this Alakazona I'm doing. You've been with me this entire time. May as well just keep it going. So let's close up our pot of Speedball Super Black, get our dip pins out the way, and we're going to bring in some technical drawing pins. I've shown some of these off in another video, but over Christmas I got this set here. Hold on a second. Okay, so here's what I wanted to show off. My new old stock set of Koh-i-Noor Rapidograph Technical Drawing Pins. These are really cool. Got them over Christmas. I don't know exactly what year they're from. I also got this humidifier to keep them in. Not sure exactly what year they are from, but they were mostly untouched. Somebody like inked up one of the pins. They were supposed to be completely untouched, according to the listing. But somebody inked up one of the pins, like opened them up, and there was like ink in here. I'm like, that's not supposed to be right. So I was able to get $20 back from the seller. They were an eBay purchase. I've been having a lot of fun with them, actually. I've used them before. This isn't the first page I've used them on, but I did like this house with the rapidographs. I did all of this panel actually with the rapidographs, aside from the sky. I used a dip pin for that. So I've really been enjoying them. But about getting back to the topic at hand, I have no idea how this video is gonna do. No clue. But I find that when I talk about like stuff like this, the videos tend, for me at least, they tend to do pretty well, and I've thought about like, well, why is that? Um, like even take the cyborg videos. Uh, I think that my guess would be is it's like cathartic for people. There are other people who feel the exact same way that I do about this. The exact same about the same topic, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, they probably like it. They probably like it well enough. I can like manga a lot too. Like if you give me something that the thing about me is if you could probably tell just by looking at my channel, but I can love pretty hard. You know, if you give me something that I love, I can really, really, really get into it. You know what I mean? If you give me something that just like strikes that chord with me and hits those notes for me. And yeah, I would love to find more and more stuff like that, but unfortunately, it's kind of like rare, you know, when you're looking for some of the specific stuff that I've mentioned. It's unfortunately hard to find, you know. It is. It's just not easy to find. Uh it's not that none of it exists, but it exists in relatively small numbers, is often quite short-lived, and you know, it's it's like difficult to find something that sustains that for a while. And I think that's what like people really want. I think one so it's cathartic, you know, for people to hear, hey, yeah, I fully get that. I understand that. Like I'm like that too. You know, like I'm looking for stuff like that too. I wish we got more stuff like that, you know. Um and you're like a person who's like giving voice for people like that. I think that's why like videos like this tend to do pretty well for me. And I've been talking about some stuff kind of like this lately, actually. Like, I haven't uploaded it all yet. Like the black male fantasy, like why is that rare? Um, there's a light here. I don't want that to get in the way. We're almost done with this Aleka. I think we're gonna darken up her lashes. I could have done this with those other tools, but we'll use the technical drawing pen to do that. Don't mistake these, I mentioned it before, but don't mistake these for like a Pigma Micron pen or something like this. This is a different type of pen. More expensive and quite a bit better. And they're permanent. Like you don't throw them out. You just like ink them up with more ink when you're done. When the ink runs out. And you're not supposed to like leave ink in them. You're supposed to clean them out. I've really enjoyed using these. I don't think there's a place for like Pigma Micron pens, and so I still have some like multiple packs of them, and I'm sure that like they're still useful like for various things, but for like serious drawing, I don't think I will be going back to those. I kind of like these rapidographs quite a bit, and isographs and like pens like that. I'm quite an enthusiast of these sorts of pens, so you'll have to sort of bear with me if I just geek out over them. Like they're just a joy to use. Um, but about what I was talking about earlier about that fantasy and it being, and you know, some of the stuff I'm saying being cathartic for people. Okay, so about that, one thing like, and I've talked about this in other videos, like the black male fantasy. This type of stuff is completely common for anybody to want. Anybody to want. You know what I mean? So I don't think that, I think there might be a bit of an embarrassment from some people, sadly, and there are all kinds of reasons for that. Some psychological, some just kind of ingrained from society, sort of. Um, to why people could feel like embarrassed about saying, "Hey, I'm looking for an ultra handsome black male hero with, a gorgeous blonde love interest, and they do action, adventure, superhero, cosmic stuff." Okay, well, Zatswan will give you that. And if that's exactly what you want, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. I guess that's the point of what I'm saying. For like having these wants that are so elusive, uh, well, the wants aren't elusive. Having like the stuff that's going to meet that need is elusive. Just adding in some detail on Alika's like arm. What would you call this exactly? Like it's some kind of arm jewelry. Sure, there's a name for it, a bangle or something. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Um, okay. And then some little shine and stuff. And she is just about done. Let me see if this like hair in the back is gonna come down here and here. Yeah, we're gonna see like some stuff in here. Some hair back here. So let's add that in. Actually, let's use a kind of put this pin away and get a smaller nib size to get in that detail there. Yeah, there's nothing to be embarrassed about wanting that. And the thing is, like, I think a lot of people, they don't even, I don't know, because I don't think I've been in their shoes much, but I would guess they probably don't even think too much about it. It's like their needs are always mostly perpetually met in this area. So, like, if you're never ever starved, do you ever think about not having enough food? Probably not. There's just always food there for you. You know what I mean? It's not, when something's like not a concern, you're probably not thinking too much about it. So I'm talking about people here who are essentially starved. And it's like, well, we want food. you know, uh, let's add some, let me see. We'll add a little bit back here. Okay, I think that this Alakazona is mostly done. Let's actually connect that. So, yeah, of course, your concern is getting some food. You know what I mean? Like, so there's like nothing wrong with like wanting that stuff and saying that you want it, being aware that you want it. It's not shallow, it's not being too specific, it's not being too like demanding or anything like that. I think there are some like some concerns from people. Like I think they're kind of hesitant to like come out and say, "Yeah, this is what I'm looking for." Kind of bashful. Um But no, there's nothing wrong with that. Anybody would want stuff like this. Anybody would want escapism that suits them, that looks like something they would like to escape into, you know. Um, Nothing wrong with that. So I've just found that manga, I don't find it really meets that need for me to. Well, not lately at least. Like I said, I have a history of reading it, but after you've consumed so much, you know, um, consume so much, and it's like the same things always like happening. Uh, it meets certain needs of yours, but other important ones just go completely unmet. And then, of course, you're thinking to yourself, well, what if the hero was like this instead? But the hero never is. There are spatterings of characters here or there. Yes, I'm aware of them. But, that's like eh, eventually, you want the hero to be like this dude here. You know what I mean? Like, you just want a guy that's the hero. And these other people, they're just getting it all the time. You know what I mean? So, uh, it's like, I like, for people who want to come and say, like, well, why can't you just, identify with this, or why can't you just do that, or you're being too shallow or something. I don't think people, like, who aren't being starved like that, I don't think they're well qualified to tell, like, someone like me what I should be feeling, or about the subject. You know what I mean? Because they're literally not in the same shoes, not at all. I think it's something you have to actually experience, you know, to fully understand. I think people can intellectually understand it just fine, but I think to, like, get a complete full understanding of it, you actually have to, live it. All right, everybody. So I think looks like we've completed this Alakazona here. Thanks for hanging out while I was inking that. If this looks interesting to you, you can purchase Zatswan Multiversal Guardian in the link in the description of this video. It's a 130-page cosmic fantasy full color graphic novel. That is only $2.99 for the digital ebook version. So that's 130 pages for only $2.99. Not a bad deal if I say so myself. Um, so if you do pick that up, please leave reviews. That helps a whole lot. Helps me know what you think of my work, and it also helps other people find it. And there's also a print version too if you prefer to read that way. So anyway, please like and subscribe. Those are only a couple little clicks for you, but they're a huge help for me. Stay on the lookout for more content. There will be more coming soon, and until that content arrives, be sure to take care.